guide to fun and meaningful Winlink exercises. My name is Oliver, K6OLI. I'm the District Emergency Coordinator for Aries LAX Northeast District. I would like to thank Hawaii Aries for inviting our group to talk to you about how we do Winlink exercises and how to try and keep them fun. There are different ways of running fun Winlink nets. San Diego Aries is very competent with Winlink. They have a lot of experience. They do things slightly differently. This is how we do it. There's no right or wrong way. Whatever works for you is how you should do it. And everybody has different requirements. A little bit about how many nets we're running. We have 5 simplex digital nets per month. Every first Sunday, which is our beginner's net, and every Thursday night at 2100 hours, we do have a digital net. Most of the time now, they're Winlink peer-to-peer nets and portable gateway nets. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means in a little bit and how we've actually employed that recently in an exercise. We also do N-beams, so FL Digi and FL messaging combination. That's been working really well, but we've reduced the number of N-beams nets. We have 4 Winlink digital exercises per month, and our Winlink digital exercise coordinator, Dave, W6JDG, sends those out every Sunday. They're gateway driven, so people can take up to a week to do the exercises. There's quite a bit of crossover, so you will see the exercises from our live nets appear in the digital exercises that go through the gateway with kind of a time delay, because we want to make sure that people get the same training and very similar training across the board. We also have 4 fifth Saturday exercises, deployment exercises every year. And those have been extremely valuable. And Winlink is always a big component of that. And finally, we do have 3 to 4 event and exercise support happenings per year. That includes Baker to Vegas, the AC100 Ultra Race, the Ronald McDonald Walk, or Shakeout, which just happened on 10/17. So I'm assuming Shakeout was a big thing for you guys in Hawaii as well. By the way, the picture here is of Mike, KM6KQ, from Shakeout last week, where we were at the Monterey Park EOC, and what you can see, he's got Winlink running on the left-hand side here, and he's got Arden Mesh on the right-hand side. So we used Winlink across various modes and bands. So that was really a fantastic exercise to try out our systems. So in total, we have about 115 digital exercises per year, which gives us a fantastic platform to try out a whole lot of ideas, to experiment, and to train people. We have a hardcore of between 8 and 10 people who do about 90% of these exercises and have gotten extremely competent in Winlink and in N-beams. So whenever they say something works, it works. And when they say it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. So it's very reliable. We also have more people, about another 10 or so, who plug in somewhere between 10 and 50% of the time. So they're very good at what they do. But the more exercise you get, the better it is. One of the things that we've noticed is these are perishable skills. If you don't do this, if you don't participate for 4 or 5 weeks, it'll take you a while, and that includes me. It'll take us all a while to get back in the swing of things. This is a system, and it does require constant training. So keep that in mind as we go through the slides here. Good practice nets mimic actual nets. That's one of the key concepts of how we use Winlink. It doesn't help us. There are a couple of groups out there, when they practice, their practice nets don't really reflect what's happening in actuality. And we find that that's actually very dangerous, because then you're faced with situations that you can't actually handle. We try to make sure that our nets are what we expect to see in practice. So our structure is the same as our voice. There's a check-in, there's lots of sending traffic, and then there's a checkout. Our operating practices are the same for digital as they are for voice. Keep the statements short and to the point. Only send traffic when you have actionable traffic to send. So sending us something, building XYZ hasn't fallen down, doesn't do us any good. Unless it's been requested by a specific agency. So by and large, if there is a problem, send the problem. Don't send us anything that's okay. Enforce precedence. There is a clear precedence in amateur radio, and that's emergency, priority, health and welfare, and routine traffic. And it's the same thing for our nets. Usually because Aries LAX supports hospitals, all our traffic is priority traffic. That means served agency traffic. People don't have to announce that unless it's emergency traffic, in which case it switches. But we do very little health and welfare and almost no routine traffic. It's great for practicing relays. That's become a major skill that people have developed with Winlink too. And Winlink makes that extremely easy. And we like scenario-based exercises. So we practice specific parts or real or imagined scenarios that make the exercises more relatable. When people have a mental palace in which they can relate what the exercise is, that we found makes it easier for people to retain what they've learned. So, and we'll go through quite a few examples during this. VoiceNet practice is the same as the digital net practice. There's always a preamble that states what the net, what the purpose is, which organization and which frequencies are being used. We take check-ins. We usually start with voice check-ins because we want to get an overview over who's available. And then we go down the list again, and then we do digital check-ins. And that's proved to be very, very important. I'll tell you in a moment why. And then it's the same as everything. We call for emergency traffic. If there's none, we go to priority traffic until there's no more priority traffic. And then we usually do a call out for health and welfare, and then routine, which usually don't happen on our nets. And then we ask for additional traffic. And if there is, then we go back. And if there's no more additional traffic, we do our checkouts and our net close. All of this is very familiar to you. Core values for fun nets. One, exercises should be first and foremost fun. Whenever you design an exercise, ask yourself, how would I have a good time with this? Because people are donating their time, they're spending their time, they do want to have that exercise where they're saying, okay, this was fun, I learned something new, and I want to do this again. It has to be meaningful to the participant, to the organization and the served agency. So exercises where you're just goofing around generally don't serve a purpose. People have to feel, and it's very, very important that they do, that the traffic they send can make a difference. We're all doing emergency traffic, emergency preparedness. You do not ever want to have people who show up at an event and they feel completely unprepared. So whenever you design an exercise, think about, how can I make this meaningful to the participant? What does he get out of it or she get out of that? How does it benefit my organization, in our case, Aries LAX, and most importantly, the served agency? Is this the traffic they actually want us to send? And finally, exercises should be teaching skills and provide for experimentation. At the end of the day, one of the things that I've come away with, and I do quite a few, my role is very often net control. I have yet to come out of one of these nets where I thought, I didn't learn anything. There's something new I learn every single time. And that's really rewarding. And that's also the feedback we've been getting. People come back because they feel like they're getting skills, they get to hone skills, and they get to experiment and try out different things. Where do we start whenever we design a net? So the planning, and you don't have to spend weeks on this. Usually take 15 minutes over your lunch break and start thinking about that. Before every net, we ask ourselves, okay, is this a teaching and training net? And if it is, we need to have a specific outcome. What is it we're trying to achieve? What's the end state that we're looking for? Is it that that after the exercise, they need to have the skill to send an ICS 213 with a proper subject line that makes it easy for net control to see who it's from and what it is regarding? Are you trying to teach them a new Winlink tool, like GPS coordinates, for example? So that's one of those things that you have to think through beforehand. That determines how you design the exercise. Or is this a net for experimentation? And experimentation can be a lot looser in a lot of ways. They explore the parameter space. So do you want to test a different mode? You do have done a lot of VARA FM. How does it compare to RDOP? Can you get people to switch relatively easily? Can you switch to WinMore, for instance? Is there a new feature in Winlink that you want to test out? Are there new Winlink options that you want to try with people? So we've done quite a few of those. Have people got new antennas that they'd like to try out, and so on? Those experimentation nets are usually better for people who are very experienced because they're less flustered. When you have a group with a lot of people who haven't done regular exercises, I find it easier to do teaching and training nets. And sometimes when I have a net where really it's everybody has a lot of experience, then we just switch over to experimentation. We try out different modes and so on. And we have an open discussion afterwards how well things work out. The picture on the left here, by the way, is Jeff, W2JCL, who used Winlink during field deployment last week at Monterey Park at their shakeout. And that was a fantastic exercise, and we'll talk about that in a little while. He was there with Rob, K6YGF, whom you saw in the previous photo, and they set up a field station, completely independent, no grid power whatsoever, and they passed a lot of damage assessments that the certs had collected, and the certs actually went through the neighborhood and collected that and took pictures, and they passed that via Winlink. And both of them are very experienced operators who had no problem setting this up and using several modes to pass the traffic. Teaching and training nets for net control. First, you determine the end state. One of the key concepts here is we limit our learning outcomes to a maximum of 2. Don't overwhelm people. You can have 15 things that you throw on top of them, and it'll get everybody very frustrated. Whenever I design them, I want to usually have them learn 1 or 2 things maximum. So get the ICS correctly, and if there's an attachment, have the attachment correct. If they're doing an ICS 213, have the subject matter correct. If they're using different mode, go with some familiar form. If they're using a hospital status assessment that they're familiar with, you can start building on top of that. How many different ways can they send it, for example? So one of the things we've noticed with that is by making these exercises relatively short, we actually get through a lot of exercise in a short amount of time. And because we vary the exercises a lot, people develop many skills in a relatively short amount of time. And whenever we have deployment exercises, they can actually put it all together in one package. One of the things that happened during our SUSA deployment exercise, for instance, was that the other groups that we were interoperating with were absolutely stunned at how much traffic our Ares LAX stations were pushing in a very short amount of time, simply because we kept focusing on that. And for them, it was no problem to push, to do a check-in, to send an HSA, to send an ICS 213 or a HICS 254, which is a patient tracking form, and so on, all in less than an hour. And that for a variety of hospitals, we had 5 stations set up there. So that was really good. The next question is, what skills or features are being showcased? What is it you want them to get out of this? And you can be very creative with this. Is it a specific form? Should they use a specific path to contact you? Are you trying to do peer-to-peer? Are you trying to showcase the gateways? Are you trying to show them their different paths? So determine that before you write the exercise. You always want to have some form of agency traffic. For us, that means hospital status assessments and resource requests. And IRIS LAX has its own forms for that, which are in comma separated value or CSV format. And they require a little bit of training, not a whole lot, but it's really, really valuable to have people train that on a consistent basis. General traffic, ICS 213s, damage assessments, things that fire departments, that hospitals, that sheriffs, law enforcement agencies, and so on need on a consistent basis, and that are built into Winlink very often. That's a great thing to test. Winlink features, different modes, GPS, we've played a lot with GPS. Attachments, images are very valuable. That came in really handy during the shakeout again, where we actually just resized images that people had taken off buildings to show damage. It was, of course, imagined damage, but we were able to send those images, and having those skills to actually resize it and having trained that beforehand was extremely valuable because you didn't have to walk anybody through that over the air. Recent lessons, that's always very important, and it can be a lesson that you've had from one of your exercises, or that you've had, or events. If there is something like, let's say, the hurricanes in Puerto Rico or an earthquake, and you read about issues, and the first thing that everybody will tell you is communications breaks down, ask yourself, well, how would we have solved that using Winlink? And so these lessons can be built in, and they're extremely valuable, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. And always build a scenario to contextualize. And there are a couple of very important things about scenarios that we'll talk about. Serious scenarios like potential hazards, earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunamis, and so on, terrorist attacks, we use them, but I try to keep them on the lighter side of things. One thing, you do not want to worry anybody listening in or actually reading this on the Winlink viewer. And the other thing is, you don't want to have depressing nets. So sometimes once we had a terrorist attack, for example, of teams going around, and the instruction said, find creative ways to beat back the terrorists. And so some people threw food at them, the others beat them with long wire antennas, and people got really creative in this to keep this light. So it's important to keep things light, even though you're dealing with a serious topic. And then, of course, you can have funny ones that entertain and relax. Halloween is coming up this weekend. Certainly a great time to start doing a zombie apocalypse event and have people fun with that.